Christmas is coming. It's the season of giving. So give yourself the best gift of all, Skrilla. Count them Benjamins along with Father Christmas. Stack dead presidents with Saint Nick. You can do it all at Alpha Draft. It's a fantasy esports service. And for All Stars, if you go quickly, you can enter the day one contests still. They'll have different contests every day of the week for the first three. Obviously, they won't for the final because there'll only be two teams playing there. You can pick which teams you want to play. Do you think NA can beat out EU? Pick your NA players. If you think that China, LPL can actually beat Korea, LCK, that'll be happening on another day. That'll obviously be a very interesting game. I think that's day 3. So every day there'll be contests, alphadraft.com. Now with the All-Star event being here, the reason why I'm called the AllStar Grinch for this episode is because I don't really like the way this tournament's set up and structured. I think a lot of it's in a way that it could be a lot better, and that's what I'm going to talk about here. Now, the basic concept of an all-star tournament, it's absolutely fine. I think it's something that is fun, but that's the thing. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a circus. It's supposed to be a freak show. It's supposed to be a gimmicky novelty for the fans to enjoy watching the players they want to see there. That's why there's a fan vote. Like, I actually do agree with fan voting. If you wanted to make this some kind of contest that was incredibly competitive with the best possible team composed of good players to really battle it out for the regions, you'd have something like where the coaches of the different teams in the different regions voted their players to represent their team, like the all NBA team type scenario in the NBA to decide who the best players are. Instead, this is supposed to be a fun competition, so in that respect, it's fine that these sorts of players are voted in. It's not supposed to be where the problem, in fact, comes when fans take the results of All-Stars, especially the 5v5 tournament, as indicative of the region's strength. Whereas instead, it's supposed to be you're putting together these people that are popular, that's supposedly good as well, that the fans want to see them play against each other in an exhibition fun game that doesn't count for anything. Now then, the big thing is, because it's supposed to be a fun tournament, I don't really mind people voting in old or retired or just popular players who aren't the best anymore or aren't the best at their position. I mean, obvious examples here would be, well, basically almost any top laner being left out in favour of Dyrus for NA. I mean, it's pretty obvious to me that there were many different players within the NA region who were better than Dyrus as top laners. Think about Quaz, got Impact, we've got Haunter. I mean, you can go down the list. Many players who were better in that particular scenario. But you go over, and then there's the scenario where, you know, maybe the right player wasn't voted in. A good player was voted in, but not the right one. So a good example would be the LMS team, where they voted in Westor, who's certainly a good player. He's a good mid laner in LMS, but Toys was better. Maple was much better. Maple was arguably like MVP candidate the whole season. Just much better at all times as a mid laner, much better at Worlds as a mid laner. This is a player you'd vote in if you wanted the best player at that position. But okay, fans have voted in a popular player and a good player. That's fine. You see this happen in the NBA. I remember a few seasons back, LaMarcus Aldridge, who was a really good small forward, was actually not voted into the All-Star game, or I think he might have been left out entirely. He wasn't even picked as a coach's reserve, where even though at the time he was much better than some of the old players who were put in from his position, because obviously in the NBA as well, fans vote in old players who were once all-stars, were once very good players, just because they're so popular now. I mean, Allen Iverson was getting voted until the very end. Players like that are always going to lead the way. People would vote in Kobe this year, I'm sure, even though he's completely off his game, is terrible, and some other shooting guard definitely deserves the position over him. But again, it's a fun thing. It's not supposed to mean anything big. It actually doesn't indicate in the NBA, for example, which conference is stronger as to who wins. There were many times when the East was terrible and actually they won some of the games because their teams, maybe they had the right all-stars, so they had the cream of the crop was good enough, but the rest of the league, the rest of the conference wasn't that good, especially in terms of team strength. Because again, what does an all-star game where you don't play with the whole team have to do with team strength within your region? Because team strength is going to determine how good your region is, especially in terms of overall and in terms of how well they can compete internationally. So, I mean, we actually saw that in Season 3 for League, where we put together a bunch of good players for the European team, but they were players from Gambit, some of them who didn't have very good English, playing with players from other teams who didn't have any good comms with them, and so it was a mess in that particular sense. There's also the fact that, as a result, if you want to look at this tournament in terms of the best players for the best, really the only rosters that are legit in that respect is LCK, have a very good roster. Maybe the only one that's a legacy player there is Madlife. I'd have put in someone like Gorilla myself. I think he's much better. But Madlife's at least still had a good season. Yeah, it was better than expected because in the spring season he'd really fallen off. In Season 4, summer, he was quite bad. But he has gotten a lot better, but he's not at the level of someone like Gorilla. So yes, you would have replaced him. The rest of the roster, all very good players at their position, all competing for the best at their position over the season 5 2015 year. You look at the LPL team, again, very good players across the board. All of them at times have been extremely good players within LPL. Absolutely fine to do it this way. Admittedly, Coral 1's probably fallen off a bit, but he was very good for the first half of the year. Then you look at the EU roster. EU roster's very good. Okay, you look up and down the players. I mean, maybe you might have taken Reckless and put in someone like Forgiven or put in Freeze if you just want to talk about purely best players at the positions. But actually, Reckless has always been a good player, and certainly he's going to work within this sort of a team because he's not expected to be the star, and he can be more of a supportive role in the carry roles and allow someone like Hooney to carry, allow someone like Froggen to get a bit more jungle attention. So it actually works out fine there. So those 3 rosters would make it into a proper all-star of like trying to make the best teams. Whereas you look at LMS, you look at NA, and it is too much about popularity and trying to get legacy players in there and just trying to have fun players in there, but not necessarily making the most competitive team or the best players for her position. Okay, not a big deal though if you understand the real concept of all-stars. That's not my big contention. Moving on, I did think that Riot improved matters by this year having more of the Season 3 approach, where it's actual all-star teams that are voted in. It's not where you have teams that are just the best team from their region, they were the number 1 in their region playing at the tournament, because remember, Season 4 was essentially their all-star Season 4 for 5v5 was just what MSI is this year. So now we've got the best of both. In Season 3, you voted in the players and they played in a bracket and it was a proper all-star series. Now, the problem is, even though now we've got best of both because we have MSI and All-Stars, I still don't like the structure. I mean, I didn't like the structure in Season 3 where it was a bracket with one weird double elimination portion but not for part of it, and then you were competing for the overall a slot at Worlds, an extra slot for your country. So actually Korea only got the extra slot because they won that particular All-Star tournament, believe it or not. They wouldn't have had one of their teams there. So actually in the end it would have been MVP Ozone who wouldn't have gone actually. So I didn't like that format. Don't like this one either. In general, as a basic trend, I would just say I want this sort of all-star tournament to be structured like this in terms of the teams and it being actual positions, people from different teams at each position. But what I want is one big group with everyone playing each other. So NA gets to play everyone. LPL gets to play everyone. Instead, this structure has the 6 regions, because they've included international wildcard, split up into 2 teams. One's Team Ice, that's LPL, EU, and international wildcard. The other one is Team Fire. That's LCK, NA, and LMS. Now, first and foremost, these teams aren't even vaguely fair because, first of all, Fire is automatically stacked by having LCK. Now, whoever has LCK is extremely likely to win because LCK is a favorite to win every single match. But one team's going to have LCK, right? Here's the problem. They have LCK, by far the best region, but then they also have international wildcard on the Ice side of things, the one that has LPL and EU. So Team Fire has the best region and Team Ice has the worst region. So already there's a disparity right there. The worst region, in theory, in the Fire one is actually LMS. I mean, people could say it's NA as well. You could argue there, but you could say it's LMS. I mean, the joke here would be you'd say, well, we've got international wildcard on Team Ice and we've got the other wildcard, NA, on Team Fire. That's great as a joke, but it's not fair because international wildcard is so bad, they should lose every game. Meanwhile, Korea has a very good chance to win every game. So immediately the team concept is way off there. With that said, my bigger issue is that with these teams, you don't play any other country or region within your team. So LPL doesn't play EU and doesn't play International Wildcard. LCK will never play NA. That's a big problem for me. I want to see these teams play against each other. I want to see Faker play against Bjergsen. I want to see these matchups. It's only once a year, so let's have this be long enough so that we can have them all play in a big group. Instead, we're not going to get NA versus Korea. We're not going to get EU versus LPL. We'll never get to see these matches. Unless those teams, in fact, no, you can't ever see those matches because even if even the teams that make the final, it has to be one from Ice and one from Fire. So you can never see those matchups no matter what. I would rather this tournament lasted a whole week long. I mean, we've got time off now, and it had all the teams in one big group. I mean, personally, I'd get International Wildcard the fuck out there. I don't care about them. I don't think they have any relevance here. I don't even see what fans they're representing. For example, most of the players here are from Europe. Okay, yeah, they're from CIS region. Yeah, so are all the fucking Moscow 5 players, mate. They still all made it into the European LCS and into the European All-Stars. It doesn't make sense to have players from Europe who are called All-Stars, but they're not playing in the European All-Star. That doesn't make any coherent sense. And the way that was done doesn't make any sense, because actually, this team who's representing International Wildcard didn't even win the 5v5 tournament at the International Wildcard qualifier thing. They finished second, but because of the results in the other fun modes, they actually got to win instead of the Turkish team. So it doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, I would get rid of International Wildcard. But let's say you're going to include them. Just have the 6 regions within a group, have them play each other once each, then you get to see all the matchups, then have a final. That to me would be the better approach. I mean, like I said, the Season 3 approach with that weird bracket where there was one double elimination portion but not on the other side, I thought that was weird as well. And again, you didn't get to see every region play each other, so actually that wasn't ideal really. Now, in terms of the 1v1 stuff, I don't really care that much about that. To me, those are okay for fun modes. They're just gimmicks. I'm not actually that interested in the results of stuff like 1v1 and marksman mode. People want to watch them for fun, fine. As long as they don't take away from potentially running a better format for 5v5, like I mentioned before. I mean, 1v1's vaguely interesting, since you're going to, in theory, see some extremely good players who might make some really cool plays. That's good. But again, my problem is I don't think it means very much, because you only play one game for a start off, so there's no big deal there. I mean, that a game can be ended over one tiny little error. No, it's not like, oh, in a 5v5, one tiny little error can cost you the whole game. No, usually you have to make more small errors and more strategic big errors to get you to a point where one little team fight, which actually might have 15 different components in it, could decide the whole game. It's not like that. In a 1v1, it's a very minor thing that might cost you the whole match, especially because of the time component, because it's people are farming or being able to get to the first tower. And also, I never found it that interesting, because you don't even have all your abilities. You don't have any items. To me, it's actually not that interesting. The League of Legends champions are shit to actually watch when they have no abilities and no levels and no actual items. That's actually when it's the least interesting. The most interesting part of the game is mid-game and beyond, when people have got a few items, they can do some things, and they can show off the capabilities of the kit. You don't really see that in 1v1. So actually, I'm not that interested in 1v1, except the odd cool play or the tension of watching two cool players go head-to-head who don't normally get to play each other, like Frog and Faker. Okay, that's cool, obviously. Also, for example, 1v1 in Counter... I also don't think League of Legends is suited as a 1v1 game. It's clearly not. And as a result, it reminds me of CSGO. CSGO is a 5v5 game. It isn't suited as a 1v1 game. We've seen way too many 1v1s amongst pro players, where because of the weird 1v1 maps, just like you have a weird 1v1 map in League of Legends, you get funky results where a guy with way worse aim and a much worse player actually can win a 1v1 against the best player in the world. Whereas in an actual team match, he'd never have a chance of outperforming that guy with any kind of consistency if they played 3 or 4 matches. So, yeah, it doesn't really mean a whole lot to me beyond the fun gimmick. The problem, again, is fans go ahead and use it as a metric as to who's better. People might say, well, of course they don't. No, we know it's fun. People to this day still reference Soaz winning the 1v1 top lane competition at Season 3 All-Stars as though that means he's the best 1v1er of top laners or the best top laner. Like, not even vaguely. That had no bearing on it whatsoever. Not least since in actual 5v5 matches, Soaz famously would tilt his tits off when he was against Chinese and Korean top players. So it doesn't really work in that sense. But again, as long as it's understood as a fun thing, who cares? It's okay, I guess. The starting times is a minor issue. Now, personally, it doesn't affect me. I don't tend to watch tournaments live in that way anyway. I also don't want to watch every match, so I tend to want to look at the scoreboard, see if it's a good game, read comments, then go back and watch the game if it's good, skip to the good parts of it. And so I'm just getting to the meat of it anyway. So I get away with it in that sense. But I don't think the start times are very good in terms of the regions, because the start time, I think, was something like, it was around 5 p.m. for the first day in Los Angeles, so in PST, which is 2 a.m. Central European time. So terrible time for Europe, because you could start watching, but in theory you're not going to get to watch all the games. It'll be way too late in the night to stay up. For China, it's not very good. It's 9 a.m. Shanghai time, which means you're going to have to wake up very early. For LMS, likewise, 9 a.m. Taipei, similarly bad time. For Korea, it's 10 a.m., which is a little bit later, but even so, I don't know many gamers who wake up at 10 a.m. in the morning. I mean, maybe people who go to school, so maybe they can watch it if they have the day off. Okay, fair enough, that's fine. So really, it's only actually really good for one region, which is NA. It's not good for any of the other regions. International Wildcards obviously representing Europe, and some of them are from Eastern Europe, so it'll be even worse for them. It'll be early in the morning, like we're talking like 3 or 4 a.m. for some of those guys. Now, again, I don't really care. And in theory, as long as they keep moving All-Stars region to region, it should all even out. Except it doesn't quite, because I actually went back and I looked this up. Because first of all, if you really did want to accommodate to the most fans, to make it good as possible for the most fans, you would do China, because first of all, China has the most people watching. Secondly, China's the same in terms of time zone for Shanghai as Taipei. And secondly, it's only 1 hour behind Korea. So by doing it good for China, you can capture LPL region, LCK region, and Taipei and LMS region all in one. And you'll get good times for all of them. So what I looked at was Season 3 was in Shanghai, China. Now, they had matches that started around 1 p.m. local time, which is about 10 p.m. it was PDT at the time. I think that's what it was listed at. 10 p.m. PDT and 1 a.m. EDT for American time. So that's not that bad for America. You can definitely watch if you're on the West Coast there. Not good for Europe still, but 1 p.m. local time as opposed to 5 p.m. local time start for the first day for this tournament. And 3 p.m.'s the latest, the earliest that they start on some of the other days. So already they made it start 2 hours earlier local time when it was in China. Then you go, Season 4 Paris. We're in Europe now. 3 p.m. local time first day, 1 p.m. local time second day and beyond. So again, we're going to 1 p.m. local time for people to start. Yet the earliest it'll start in California is 3 p.m. So it does seem like a slight bias in terms of they get to start later in LA than they did in any of the other regions for some reason. 1 p.m. local time for Europe was 4 a.m. PDT, so admittedly bad for NA, bad for East Coast and West Coast. And except in theory, if people don't mind waking up at 9 a.m., they can wake up at 7 a.m. I think those are both bad. I'm a gamer. I stay up till like 4 a.m. sometimes. I don't get up at fucking 9 a.m., mate, or 7 a.m. That was 7 p.m. Shanghai. So actually Europe one wasn't bad because it got good time for Europe and good time for China, LMS, and Korea. That was actually the most ideal time. I'd say if you want to go in line with what was done before and make it the most fair for every region, you should probably, here's the question mark, is do we start it early like we say there? I'd actually say go the other way. Why not go ahead and start the games at like 7 p.m. PST? Because 7 p.m. is going to be 4 a.m. CET. So first of all, that's better than trying to stay up and having to go to sleep. You can at least wake up earlier and just watch whatever end matches. But you're also going to make the time ideal then for China, Taipei, and Korea. And you're going to capture them. You're going to give them the most viewing time. Again, it's not a big deal. I just thought that on that issue as well, it was quite weird the way it was done because it didn't fit with the past schedules. And it's essentially missed out every region of the 5 big ones, all of them except NA, which is giving NA a good time. So a little bit weird there. So I'm not that big a fan of AllStar. It'll still be decent. There'll still be some novelty factor to be taken out of it. It's still fun to see some of the matches. It will be fun to see NA EU, to see LPL versus LCK. I just think that there's some obvious ways it could be done better, and that I can't really see any good reasoning as to why you wouldn't do it that way. And I think for some of the aspects, like even if you have the fun modes be a Team Fire, Team Ice, I don't understand why you need to have it where Team Ice and Team Fire don't play each other in the 5v5. Because to me, the main thing All-Star should be about is the 5v5 tournament, everyone getting to play everyone. So you get to see all the All-Stars mixing it up. That's the cool part. That's to me, the concept you're trying to sell behind the All-Stars thing. So weird that they haven't done it that way. I wish they had.